crying wolf brought her dying cub to human. What baby did put everyone in shock? Let us know where you're watching from. The moon hung like a silver coin above Black Rock Forest, casting long shadows through the trees. A desperate mother wolf named Luna limped through the underbrush, her silver-gray coat stained with blood that wasn't her own. In her jaws, she carried her dying cub, a small bundle of matted fur barely moving against her muzzle. The young pup's breathing came in shallow gasps, its small body bearing the terrible wounds from a hunting trap that had nearly severed one of its legs. Luna hadn't slept in 2 days. Her yellow eyes were wild with exhaustion and grief as she pressed forward through the darkness. The rest of her pack was gone now, killed by the mysterious men who had come in the night with guns and traps. Only she and her wounded cub had escaped, but time was running out. The little one needed help beyond what Luna could provide. At the edge of the forest stood a small wooden cabin with the warm light spilling from its windows. Luna had been here before, many moons ago, when a kind human with gentle hands had removed a thorn from her paw. She remembered his scent, the softness in his voice. But when she crept closer, keeping low to the ground, she didn't smell the man. Instead, there were different scents. A woman and something else, something small and human. Luna hesitated at the tree line, her instincts screaming at her to retreat back into the safety of the forest. But her cub whimpered, a tiny sound that pierced her heart. With no other choice, Luna gathered her courage and emerged from the trees, crossing the open yard toward the cabin's porch. Her paws made no sound on the wooden steps as she approached the door. Inside the cabin, 4-year-old Lily Morgan sat on a colorful rug, stacking wooden blocks into a tower nearly as tall as herself. Her mother, Hannah, stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes, her back turned to the door. Neither of them heard Luna's arrival until the wolf scratched gently at the door, once, twice, 3 times. "Mommy, someone's at the door," Lily said, her small voice curious rather than afraid. Hannah wiped her hands on a dish towel and frowned. "That's strange. We're not expecting anyone." They rarely had visitors this deep in the forest, miles from the nearest town. Hannah's husband, Dr. Thomas Morgan, had chosen this isolated spot for his wildlife research, and after his disappearance 6 months ago, Hannah had stayed, unable to leave the last place she'd seen him alive. Hannah approached the door cautiously, looking through the small window beside it. What she saw made her stumble backward with a gasp. "Oh my God," she whispered, her face pale with shock. "What is it, Mommy?" Lily asked, abandoning her blocks to join her mother. "Stay back, Lily," Hannah warned, putting out an arm to block her daughter. But Lily ducked under it, reaching the door before Hannah could stop her. Standing on tiptoe, Lily peered through the window. "It's a wolf, Mommy," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. "And she has a baby." Before Hannah could react, Lily had turned the doorknob and pulled the door open just enough to see Luna standing there, her yellow eyes reflecting the light from inside. The wolf made no move to enter or attack. She simply stood there, her dying cub hanging limply from her jaws. "Lily, get back!" Hannah cried, lunging for her daughter. But something extraordinary happened next. Instead of retreating in fear, Lily stepped forward onto the porch, her small face calm and unafraid. Luna's ears flattened against her head, but she didn't growl or run away. Instead, she slowly lowered her cub to the wooden boards at Lily's feet, then backed away 2 steps, her eyes never leaving the child's face. "He's hurt, Mommy," Lily said softly, kneeling beside the injured cub. "We have to help him." Hannah stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Every instinct told her to grab Lily and slam the door, to call for help, to get as far away from the wild predator as possible. But something about the way Luna was acting gave her pause. This wasn't the behavior of a dangerous animal. This was the desperate plea of a mother trying to save her child. "Daddy said wolves are smart," Lily continued, her small fingers hovering just above the cub's bloody fur. "He said they're like people. They have families and feelings." Hannah's throat tightened at the mention of Thomas. Her husband had dedicated his life to studying wolves, always insisting they were far more intelligent than people believed. His research had been controversial, especially when he began claiming that the wolves in Black Rock Forest showed signs of advanced reasoning and problem-solving abilities. Many of his colleagues had laughed at him. Others had grown strangely hostile. "Please, Mommy," Lily begged, tears welling in her big brown eyes. "The baby's going to die if we don't help." As if understanding Lily's words, Luna whined softly, her tail tucked between her legs in submission. The sound was so full of grief and hope that Hannah felt her resistance crumbling. "Oh, Thomas," she whispered to herself. "What would you do?" But she already knew the answer. With trembling hands, Hannah stepped onto the porch and knelt beside her daughter. The wolf cub was in terrible shape, its breathing shallow and irregular. The trap had left a deep gash across its hind leg, and infection had clearly set in. Without immediate help, the cub would certainly die. "Lily, go get Daddy's medical bag from under the sink," Hannah said, making her decision, "and bring some clean towels." As Lily rushed back into the house, Hannah looked up at Luna, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding. "I'll try to save your baby," she whispered to the wolf. "I promise." Luna's eyes seemed to hold an impossible intelligence. She took another step back, giving Hannah space to work, but remained watching intently from the edge of the porch. Far above, the moon disappeared behind a cloud, plunging the forest into deeper darkness. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, the sound echoing through the trees like a warning. Neither Hannah nor Luna knew it yet, but this unexpected meeting would set in motion events that would uncover the truth behind Thomas Morgan's disappearance, reveal a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of power in Black Rock County, and forge an unbreakable bond between a human child and a wolf cub, a bond that would ultimately save them all. With the medical bag in hand, Hannah worked quickly to clean the cub's wound. The small wolf whimpered pitifully as she applied antiseptic, its eyes fluttering open to reveal irises of striking amber, just like its mother's. Lily sat cross-legged on the porch, whispering soothing words that seemed to calm both the cub and Luna, who remained vigilant at the edge of the porch steps. "I need to stitch the wound," Hannah explained to Lily. "Can you keep talking to them? You're doing so well." Lily nodded solemnly, her small face serious beyond her years. "It's okay, baby wolf," she said softly. "My mommy is a doctor for people, but Daddy showed her how to help animals too. You're going to be all better soon." As Hannah prepared a needle and surgical thread from Thomas's kit, she glanced up at Luna. The mother wolf hadn't moved, her intelligent eyes fixed on Hannah's every movement. There was something unnerving about that gaze, something that reminded Hannah of Thomas's final words to her before he disappeared. "The wolves here aren't like any others, Hannah," he had said, his voice urgent as he packed his camera equipment that fateful morning. "They understand more than they should. Someone else has noticed too, and they're not happy about it." At the time, Hannah had written off his concerns as the product of too many sleepless nights tracking wolf movements. Now, with Luna watching her with those knowing eyes, she wasn't so sure. "Done," Hannah announced 20 minutes later, tying off the last stitch. "Now we need antibiotics." She rummaged through the medical bag and found a vial of injectable antibiotics Thomas had kept for emergencies with the local wildlife. Carefully, she administered a small dose to the cub. "Will he be okay now?" Lily asked, her small hand gently stroking the cub's head. Remarkably, the young wolf seemed to lean into her touch, its eyes closing in exhaustion. "I hope so, sweetheart. He needs rest and warmth now." Hannah looked up at Luna. "I don't think we should separate them. The mother needs to be with her baby." As if understanding, Luna took a tentative step forward, then another, until she was close enough to sniff her cub. Satisfied with Hannah's work, the mother wolf settled beside her baby, her large body forming a protective curve around the small bundle of fur. "They need to come inside," Lily insisted. "It's getting cold out here." Hannah hesitated. Bringing a wild wolf into their home went against every rational thought in her head, but the temperature was dropping rapidly, and the cub needed warmth to heal. Plus, there was something about Luna that didn't seem entirely wild. "Okay," she finally agreed. "But they stay in the mudroom, and you don't go near them without me." "Promise?" Lily nodded eagerly, her eyes bright with excitement. Together, they carefully moved the cub onto a thick blanket, which they used as a stretcher to carry it inside. To Hannah's amazement, Luna followed without hesitation, slipping through the door like a silver shadow. Once the wolves were settled in the small mudroom off the kitchen, Hannah closed the inner door to keep them contained. Through the window in the door, she could see Luna curled protectively around her cub, both of them finally resting. "You did a very brave thing tonight," Hannah told Lily as she tucked her daughter into bed later, "but also a very dangerous one. Wild animals aren't usually friendly, Lily. We were lucky." Lily yawned, her eyelids drooping with exhaustion. "Luna's not just any wolf, Mommy. She's special. Like Daddy always said." Hannah's heart clenched at the mention of Thomas. "What do you mean, sweetie? What did Daddy say about the wolves?" But Lily had already fallen asleep, her small chest rising and falling with peaceful breaths. Hannah sighed and kissed her daughter's forehead before turning out the light. As she closed Lily's bedroom door, a chill ran up her spine, not from the cold, but from the eerie feeling that her family had just become entangled in something much larger and more dangerous than a wounded wolf cub. In the kitchen, Hannah poured herself a glass of wine and settled at the table with Thomas's research journal. She hadn't been able to bring herself to read it since his disappearance, but tonight's events had stirred something in her. Flipping through the pages, she found his most recent entries from just before he vanished. April 15th. Observed Pack B using complex hunting strategies again. The alpha female, tagged as LF7, the one with the distinctive scar on her muzzle, appears to be teaching the others. Recorded over 2 hours of footage. This goes beyond instinctual behavior. It's deliberate knowledge transfer. April the 18th, LF7 recognized me today, not just as a human presence, but as me specifically. She approached to within 15 feet, made direct eye contact, and gave a head tilt that I've never seen directed at other researchers. Something is happening with these wolves that defies conventional understanding. April 20th. Milner from Blackrock Mining came by again today with his generous offer to buy our property. Getting aggressive now. Mentioned how unfortunate it would be if the Forest Service decided to cull the wolf population. Thinly veiled threat? Called Director Harmon at the Forest Service afterward, but he seemed evasive. Something's not right. April 22nd. Found one of my trail cameras destroyed. Not by weather or animal, deliberately smashed. Someone doesn't want me documenting what's happening with these wolves. Going to set up new cameras tomorrow in more concealed locations. Also, backing up all footage to secure cloud storage. sending access codes to Hannah via email just in case. Hannah's blood ran cold as she read the final entry, dated April 23rd, the day Thomas disappeared. Discovered something in the Northern Ridge area that explains everything. The wolves aren't just unusually intelligent, they're protecting something. Milner and Blackrock must know about it. That's why they want this land. Going back at dawn with better equipment to document everything. This could change everything we understand about... The entry ended abruptly. Hannah flipped the page, but it was blank. Whatever Thomas had discovered, he never got the chance to record it. With trembling hands, she opened her laptop and checked her email archives. There it was, an email from Thomas sent at 3:42 a.m. on April 23rd with the subject line, "Keep safe." Inside was a single link to a cloud storage folder and a password. Hannah clicked the link and entered the password. Dozens of video files appeared, organized by date. She clicked on the most recent one, dated April 22nd. The video showed dark footage from a trail camera. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just the forest at night. Then, a flash of movement. Luna, unmistakably the same wolf now sleeping in their mudroom, appeared on screen, moving purposefully through the underbrush. She wasn't alone. Following behind her was Thomas, walking slowly but without fear, as if the wolf was deliberately leading him somewhere. Hannah gasped, her hand covering her mouth. The footage confirmed that Luna knew Thomas, trusted him even. But where had she been leading him? And did it have something to do with his disappearance? A sudden knock at the front door made Hannah jump, slamming her laptop shut. It was nearly midnight, far too late for casual visitors, especially this deep in the forest. Her heart hammering, Hannah approached the door cautiously and peered through the window. Standing on her porch were two men in Forest Service uniforms. One she recognized as Director Harmon, the man Thomas had mentioned in his journal. The other was a stranger, tall and imposing with cold eyes that reminded her of a snake. "Mrs. Morgan," Harmon called through the door, his voice falsely pleasant. "Sorry to disturb you so late, but we have an urgent wildlife situation. We've had reports of an injured wolf in the area, possibly dangerous. Mind if we come in and talk?" Hannah's mind raced. How could they possibly know about Luna and her cub already, unless they had been watching the cabin, or unless they were the reason the wolf pack had been attacked in the first place? In the mudroom, Luna had risen to her feet, her hackles raised, and a low growl building in her throat. The wolf knew these men, and clearly didn't trust them. "Lily," Hannah whispered urgently, hurrying to her daughter's room. "Lily, wake up. We need to be very quiet." Lily blinked awake, immediately alert in the way only children can be. "What's wrong, Mommy?" "There are some men outside who might want to hurt Luna and her baby," Hannah explained, keeping her voice calm despite the fear coursing through her. "We need to hide them." Lily's eyes widened, but she nodded without question. Together, they hurried to the mudroom. Luna was on her feet, tense and alert, but she made no move to attack them. Hannah carefully lifted the still sleeping cub, wrapped in its blanket, while Lily opened the small trap door in the floor that led to the root cellar beneath the cabin. "Down here," Hannah whispered, gently passing the cub to Lily, who cradled it with surprising confidence. "Stay very quiet. I'll handle the men." To her amazement, Luna seemed to understand. The wolf followed Lily down the narrow stairs into the darkness of the cellar without hesitation, her movements silent and deliberate. Another knock, more insistent this time. "Mrs. Morgan, it's important we speak with you." Hannah closed the trap door, covered it with the small rug, and took a deep breath to compose herself. Whatever Thomas had discovered, Whatever Luna was trying to protect, she now had no choice but to become involved. For her husband's sake, for her daughter's safety, and for the wolves who had trusted them with their lives, Hannah would find the truth, no matter how dangerous. She approached the front door, her face carefully arranged into a mask of sleepy confusion, and turned the knob. "Director Harmon," she said, feigning surprise. "What on earth brings you here at this hour?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Sorry for the late visit, Mrs. Morgan. This is Agent Keller from the Wildlife Management Division." He gestured to the taller man beside him, who nodded curtly. "We're following up on reports of an injured wolf in this area, possibly dangerous. A hiker called it in about 3 hours ago." Hannah's mind worked quickly. 3 hours ago, Luna had been deep in the forest with her cub, far from any hiking trails. There was no way anyone could have seen them and reported it, unless they were already tracking the wolves. "I haven't seen any wolves tonight," Hannah replied, careful to keep her voice steady. "But you know how Thomas felt about the local packs. I would have called you immediately if one appeared." Harmon's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, your husband was quite passionate about wolf conservation. May we come in? It's freezing out here." Hannah reluctantly stepped aside, allowing the two men to enter. As they moved into the living room, she noticed Keller scanning the cabin with cold, calculating eyes. "Nice place," he commented. "Remote, peaceful." "That's why Thomas chose it," Hannah replied, crossing her arms. "For his research." "Ah, yes, Doctor." "Morgan's research," Harmon said, settling uninvited onto her couch. "Fascinating theories he had, quite controversial in some circles." "What exactly did you say was reported?" Hannah asked, deliberately changing the subject. Keller pulled out a small notebook. "Female wolf, silver-gray coat, possibly injured or carrying something in its mouth. Seen heading in this direction around 8 p.m. Hannah's blood ran cold at the accurate description of Luna. She forced herself to appear calm. "Well, I've been home all evening with my daughter, and we haven't seen anything. If that's all—" A soft thump from below the floorboards cut her off. Hannah's heart nearly stopped. In the cellar, something had fallen or moved. Both men's heads snapped toward the sound. "What was that?" Keller asked sharply. "Old house," Hannah said quickly. "The foundation settles at night when the temperature drops. Happens all the time." Keller didn't look convinced. His hand moved slightly, and Hannah noticed for the first time the bulge of a holster beneath his Forest Service jacket. These weren't ordinary wildlife officials. "Mrs. Morgan," Harmon said, his voice taking on a harder edge, "I'll be direct. We have reason to believe these wolves are special. Your husband's research suggested as much. If you've had any contact with them, it would be in everyone's best interest, especially yours and your daughter's, to tell us now." Hannah felt a chill run down her spine at the veiled threat. Before she could respond, the door to Lily's bedroom creaked open, and her daughter appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Mommy, who's talking?" Lily asked, her small voice cutting through the tension. Hannah moved quickly to Lily's side, putting a protective arm around her shoulders. "Just some men from the Forest Service, sweetie." "They're leaving now." Harmon smiled at Lily, but the expression seemed practiced, almost predatory. "Hello there, young lady. We're looking for some wolves that might be in the area. Have you seen any lately?" Hannah squeezed Lily's shoulder in warning, but it wasn't necessary. Her daughter's face remained innocently blank as she shook her head. "No, sir, I haven't seen any wolves, but Daddy says they're shy and only come out at night when everyone's sleeping." "Your daddy is right about that," Harmon said, his eyes calculating. "Smart man, your father." "The smartest," Lily agreed. "He said wolves are smart too. Smarter than people think." An uncomfortable silence followed, broken only when Keller's radio crackled to life. He stepped away to answer it, speaking in hushed tones. When he returned, his expression had changed. "Sir, we need to go. Johnson's team found something at the North Ridge." Harmon's eyebrows shot up. "Right now?" "I thought we cleared that area last week." "Apparently, not thoroughly enough," Keller replied meaningfully. "They're requesting immediate backup." Hannah watched this exchange carefully. The North Ridge, exactly where Thomas had been headed the day he disappeared, according to his final journal entry. Harmon rose to his feet, straightening his jacket. "Mrs. Morgan, we'll continue this conversation another time. If you do see any wolves, do not approach them. Call us immediately." He handed her a card with a number scrawled on the back. "This is my direct line, day or night." As the men moved toward the door, Keller paused, glancing toward the kitchen and the closed mudroom door beyond. "Mind if I use your bathroom before we go? Long drive back to the station." "It's not working," Hannah lied quickly. "Plumbing issue. We've been using the outhouse." Keller stared at her for a long moment, his eyes cold and assessing. Finally, he nodded and followed Harmon outside. Through the window, Hannah watched them climb into a black SUV with government plates and drive away, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Only when they had disappeared down the forest road did Hannah release the breath she'd been holding. She locked the door and turned to find Lily watching her with serious eyes. "Those were bad men, weren't they, Mommy?" Hannah knelt to her daughter's level. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" "Luna told me," Lily said simply. "She showed me pictures in my head. Those men hurt her family. They're looking for something important." Hannah stared at her daughter, a chill creeping up her spine. "Lily, what do you mean Luna showed you pictures?" Before Lily could answer, a low whine came from beneath the floor. The wolf cub was waking up, and likely in pain. Hannah decided her questions would have to wait. Together, they opened the trapdoor and descended into the root cellar. Luna stood alert at the bottom of the stairs, her amber eyes reflecting the beam from Hannah's flashlight. The cub lay on an old blanket, weakly pawing at the air. "He needs medicine," Lily said, kneeling beside the injured animal. To Hannah's amazement, Luna moved aside to let her daughter examine the cub. "And he's hungry. How do you know that?" Hannah asked, watching in astonishment as Lily placed her small hand on the cub's head. The young wolf immediately calmed at her touch. "I just know," Lily replied with a child's simple certainty. "Like how I know his name is Shadow, and his mama is Luna." Hannah felt a wave of vertigo wash over her. Thomas had often spoken about the special connection between children and animals, an openness, he called it, that most adults lost as they grew older. But this was something else entirely. "Lily, has this ever happened before? Being able to understand animals?" Lily shrugged. "Sometimes. Daddy knew about it. He said I had a gift. That's why the wolves liked him, because they could smell me on him." Hannah's mind reeled. How had Thomas never mentioned this to her? What else had her husband been keeping from her? A sudden noise from upstairs made them all freeze. Someone was on the porch again, but the footsteps were too light to be Harmon or Keller returning. Luna's ears perked up, but she didn't growl, a good sign. "Stay here with them," Hannah whispered to Lily, grabbing a heavy flashlight as an improvised weapon before climbing the stairs. Through the window beside the door, she could make out a slender figure hunched against the cold. It was a young woman with short, dark hair, stamping her feet to keep warm. Hannah didn't recognize her. "Who's there?" Hannah called through the door. "Mrs. Morgan, my name's Riley Chen. I was a graduate student working with your husband." The young woman's voice shook slightly, either from cold or fear. "Please, I need to talk to you. It's about Thomas and the wolves. I think you're in danger." Hannah hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. After Harmon and Keller's visit, she wasn't inclined to trust anyone, but something in the young woman's desperate tone seemed genuine. "How did you find us?" Hannah asked through the door. "Thomas gave me this address months ago, told me to come here if anything happened to him." Riley glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Please, I shouldn't be out in the open like this. They might be watching." Hannah made a split-second decision and unlocked the door. Riley hurried inside, bringing with her a blast of cold air and the scent of pine needles. She was younger than Hannah had initially thought, probably in her early 20s, with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a battered backpack slung over one shoulder. "Thank you," Riley said, her teeth chattering. "I've been hiding in the woods for hours, waiting for those Forest Service guys to leave. Although they're not really Forest Service, are they?" Hannah studied the young woman carefully. "You were watching my cabin?" Riley nodded, unzipping her coat. "I had to make sure it was safe. Black Rock Mining has people everywhere, including the real Forest Service." She pulled a thumb drive from her pocket. "Thomas sent me this the night before he disappeared. It's got everything. The mining surveys, the wolf research, the genetic anomalies. Everything they're trying to hide." "Slow down," Hannah said, head spinning. "What genetic anomalies? What does any of this have to do with Thomas's disappearance or the wolves?" Riley opened her mouth to respond, but froze when Lily appeared from the kitchen, her small face solemn. "Luna says we can trust her," Lily announced. "She smells like Daddy." Riley's eyes widened. "You're Lily," she said softly. "Thomas told me about you, about your connection with the wolves." She knelt to Lily's level. "I believe you. I've seen it myself, what these wolves can do, how they can communicate." Hannah felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "Would someone please explain what's going on? What happened to my husband? What's on the North Ridge that has everyone so interested?" Riley stood and pulled out her laptop. "It's easier if I show you, but first, Thomas's research subject. The wolf he called Alpha 7. Is she here?" "Her name is Luna," Lily corrected. "And yes, she's here with her baby. The bad men hurt him." Riley's eyes lit up. "She came to you." "With her cub?" She shook her head in amazement. "Thomas was right all along then. They really do understand." Hannah led them both into the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee. She had a feeling they'd need it. As Riley set up her laptop, Hannah checked on Luna and Shadow in the root cellar. The cub was sleeping again, his breathing steadier now, while Luna lay vigilant beside him. Back in the kitchen, Riley had pulled up a series of files and images. "What do you know about Black Rock Mining's interest in this area?" she asked Hannah. "Not much. Thomas mentioned someone named Milner had been pressuring him to sell our property, but I thought it was just about the land." "It's much bigger than that," Riley said grimly. "They discovered rare earth elements in the North Ridge about 2 years ago, the kind used in high-tech electronics and military applications, worth billions. But there's a problem. The richest deposits are in the heart of protected wolf territory." "So they need the wolves gone," Hannah concluded, the pieces starting to fit together. "Exactly. But these aren't ordinary wolves, Mrs. Morgan. The pack in Black Rock Forest has evolved differently. Thomas was documenting cognitive abilities far beyond what wolves should be capable of. Problem-solving, complex communication, even rudimentary tool use." Lily, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Luna's family is special because of the glowing rocks." Both women turned to stare at her. "Glowing rocks?" Hannah repeated. Riley looked stunned. How could she know about that? "We only discovered the radiation connection last month." "What radiation connection?" Hannah demanded, a knot forming in her stomach. Riley turned her laptop to show a series of maps and soil sample reports. The rare earth deposits in the North Ridge contain trace amounts of a previously unknown radioactive isotope. Low level, not dangerous to humans with limited exposure. But the wolf pack has lived in that area for generations, drinking from streams that flow through those deposits. "You're saying radiation made the wolves more intelligent?" Hannah asked skeptically. "Not exactly. We think it triggered an accelerated form of evolution, possibly affecting gene expression related to brain development. Thomas was collecting DNA samples, working with a geneticist friend at the university. The preliminary results were revolutionary." Lily tugged at Hannah's sleeve. "Mommy, Luna wants to show you something. She says it's time." Hannah looked from her daughter to Riley, then back again. "Show me what?" "The special place," Lily said, her expression utterly serious. "Where Daddy went before he disappeared. Luna knows the way." Riley's face paled. "The cave system in the North Ridge. That's where Thomas was headed his last day." She looked at Hannah urgently. "If Blackrock's team finds it first..." Hannah made a decision. "We'll go at first light, all of us. But what about Shadow?" Lily asked. "He can't walk yet." "We'll carry him," Hannah said, thinking quickly. "We can't leave him here alone, and we can't stay either. After Harmon and Keller's visit, it's not safe." Riley nodded in agreement. "They'll be back with a warrant or worse. Blackrock doesn't play by the rules." As they made hurried preparations for their pre-dawn departure, gathering supplies and Thomas's research materials, Hannah found herself looking repeatedly at the photo of her husband on the mantel. What had he discovered in those caves? And was it worth dying for? In the root cellar, Luna watched Hannah pack a bag with medical supplies for Shadow. The wolf's intelligent eyes seemed to hold a question, or perhaps a promise. Whatever connection had existed between Thomas and these remarkable creatures now extended to Hannah and Lily. For better or worse, their fates were now intertwined. As the night deepened, a storm rolled in from the mountains, bringing with it howling winds and driving rain. Hannah stood at the window, watching lightning flash across the sky, illuminating the dark forest in brief, electric moments. Somewhere out there was the truth about Thomas. And tomorrow, guided by a wolf that should not exist, they would begin their journey to find it. But in the shadowy forest beyond the cabin's warm lights, other eyes were watching. A figure in black rain gear crouched behind a massive pine tree, speaking quietly into a satellite phone. "Confirmed, sir. The Morgan woman is harboring the target wolves, and there's more. Chen is here too, with the missing data." The figure paused, listening to instructions. "Understood. We'll move on the cabin before dawn. No survivors, no evidence. Make it look like an animal attack." The figure disconnected the call and stared at the cabin through night vision binoculars, focusing on the small child visible through the kitchen window. Orders were orders, but killing a kid was never part of the plan. Still, too much money was at stake to let sentimentality get in the way. Blackrock Mining hadn't become a multi-billion-dollar corporation by leaving loose ends. Inside the cabin, blissfully unaware of the eyes watching from the darkness, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor of the root cellar, her small hands gently stroking Shadow's fur. The wolf cub had improved remarkably in the few hours since they'd treated his wounds, almost as if he possessed an accelerated healing ability. "Luna says we need to leave tonight," Lily announced when Hannah came to check on them. "She says the bad men are coming back. with more bad men. Hannah's blood ran cold. She looked at Luna, who was standing alert, ears pricked toward the trapdoor above. "How does she know that?" Hannah asked, though part of her already believed it. Lily shrugged. "She just knows, like she knew to bring Shadow to us. She says we need to go through the back tunnel." "What back tunnel?" Hannah asked, confused. "The one Daddy made," Lily replied simply. "For emergencies." Hannah stared at her daughter in shock. "Lily, what are you talking about? There's no tunnel." Luna suddenly moved past them both, going to the far corner of the root cellar where shelves lined the wall with preserved foods. The wolf pawed at the dirt floor beneath the lowest shelf, revealing what looked like a metal ring. Riley, who had joined them in the cellar, sucked in a breath. Thomas mentioned an escape route in his notes. I thought he was being paranoid. "My husband built a secret tunnel under our house without telling me?" Hannah whispered, torn between disbelief and anger. "He was trying to protect you," Riley said gently. Blackrock had already made threats. He knew what he was getting into. A sudden crash from upstairs cut their conversation short. The front door had been broken open. "They're here," Riley whispered, face pale with fear. "We need to go now." Hannah sprang into action, grabbing Shadow and wrapping him in a blanket. "Lily, help me move this shelf." Together, they pulled the heavy wooden shelving unit aside, revealing a trap door built into the cellar floor. Luna pawed at it urgently, whining low in her throat. "Riley, grab the research and Thomas's journal," Hannah ordered, trying to keep her voice steady despite the sound of heavy boots moving through the cabin above. As Riley stuffed the materials into her backpack, Hannah yanked open the trap door, revealing a narrow dirt tunnel reinforced with wooden supports. A battery-powered lantern hung from one of the beams, which Thomas must have kept ready for exactly this scenario. "Everyone in," Hannah urged, helping Lily enter first. "Riley, you next with the cub." "What about Luna?" Lily asked anxiously. As if in answer, the large wolf slipped past them into the tunnel, pausing just inside to look back expectantly. Above them, angry voices shouted commands. "Check the bedrooms. Find the kid. Dixon, get down to that cellar." Hannah grabbed the lantern and followed the others into the tunnel, pulling the trap door shut behind her just as heavy footsteps approached the root cellar entrance. Heart pounding, she secured the interior latch, then turned to face the dark passage ahead. The tunnel was cramped but navigable, sloping gently downward. The earthen walls were surprisingly well constructed, clearly the work of someone who had put significant time and planning into its creation. How had Thomas managed this without her knowledge? And what else had her husband been hiding? "Luna knows where to go," Lily whispered, moving confidently in the wolf's wake. "She says Daddy showed her this way before." Hannah wanted to question how a wolf could possibly remember or understand such things, but after everything she'd witnessed tonight, she was beyond disbelief. She simply clutched Shadow's bundled form closer to her chest and followed her daughter deeper into the earth, away from the men who would kill them all for what they knew. Behind them, muffled by dirt and distance, came the sound of gunfire. Hannah winced, imagining their cozy cabin being torn apart in the search for them. Everything they owned, all their memories. But none of it mattered as long as Lily was safe. The tunnel stretched on for what seemed like ages, occasionally branching or turning. At each junction, Luna paused, waiting for them to catch up before choosing a direction. The air grew cooler and damper as they descended, suggesting they were moving deeper into the earth than Hannah had expected. Finally, after at least 20 minutes of walking, the tunnel began to slope upward. Luna increased her pace, clearly eager to reach their destination. "Wait," Riley called softly from behind Hannah. I need to check Shadow's bandages. He's starting to squirm. They paused, huddling together as Riley examined the wolf cub by the lantern light. To Hannah's amazement, the severe wound that had threatened the cub's life just hours ago was already showing signs of healing beyond what should have been possible. "This is incredible," Riley murmured, gently rewrapping the injury. "His tissue regeneration rate is off the charts." Thomas mentioned accelerated healing in his notes, but seeing it firsthand, "Is Shadow going to be okay?" Lily asked anxiously. Riley nodded, a hint of wonder in her expression. "More than okay. At this rate, he'll be walking on his own by tomorrow." Luna whined impatiently from further up the tunnel, clearly anxious to continue. "We should keep moving," Hannah said, passing Shadow back to Riley. "We need to put as much distance as possible between us and Blackrock's men." They resumed their journey, the tunnel gradually widening until it ended at what appeared to be a solid rock wall. Luna pawed at its base, revealing a narrow opening just large enough for them to crawl through one at a time. "You first, Lily," Hannah whispered, helping her daughter get down on all fours. "Luna will guide you." Lily nodded bravely and followed Luna through the opening. Riley went next with Shadow, carefully navigating the tight space with the cub in her arms. Hannah brought up the rear, switching off the lantern before squeezing through the gap. On the other side, she found herself in a small natural cave, dimly lit by moonlight filtering through a narrow fissure above. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear night sky studded with stars. Luna stood at the cave's entrance, silhouetted against the forest beyond. "Where are we?" Hannah asked in a hushed voice, helping Lily to her feet. "About 2 miles northeast of your cabin," Riley answered, checking her GPS watch, "heading toward the North Ridge." "Exactly where we wanted to go," Hannah realized. Thomas had this planned all along. Luna made a soft huffing sound, then slipped out of the cave into the forest. Lily immediately moved to follow. "Stay close," Hannah cautioned, taking her daughter's hand. With Riley carrying Shadow, the 4 humans and 2 wolves ventured into the night-shrouded forest, leaving behind the life they had known for an uncertain future, guided by an extraordinary animal with secrets of her own. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, Hannah couldn't help but wonder what awaited them in the North Ridge Caves. What had Thomas discovered there that was worth killing for? And more importantly, would it help them find out what had happened to him? The path Luna chose wound through the densest parts of the forest, avoiding clearings and open spaces where they might be spotted. The wolf moved with purpose, occasionally pausing to sniff the air or listen, ensuring their path remained safe. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a small stream bisecting the forest. Luna stopped to drink, and they took the opportunity to rest. "We should be about halfway to the North Ridge," Riley said quietly, setting Shadow down so he could wobble over to Luna. The cub's recovery was progressing at an astonishing rate. He was already able to stand on his injured leg, though with a noticeable limp. Hannah watched the wolves, mother and child reunited against all odds, and felt a wave of determination. Thomas had sacrificed everything to protect these animals and whatever secret they guarded. She would not let that sacrifice be in vain. "What exactly will we find in these caves?" she asked Riley, keeping her voice low so as not to wake Lily, who had dozed off against a nearby tree trunk. Riley hesitated. Thomas was cautious in his notes. "But from what I gathered, there's some kind of mineral formation in the deepest chamber that might explain the wolves' unique abilities." "The glowing rocks Lily mentioned?" "Possibly." He described a chamber where the minerals in the cave walls emit a faint bioluminescence. The wolf pack has apparently been denning there for generations, maybe even centuries. Hannah furrowed her brow. And BlackRock Mining wants to blast it all away for rare Earth elements. Not just any elements, Riley corrected. Specifically ones with unusual magnetic properties that could revolutionize certain technologies, military applications mostly. A soft growl from Luna interrupted their conversation. The wolf was on her feet, ears pricked toward the direction they had come from. Shadow scrambled to hide behind his mother, his small body trembling. "What is it?" Hannah whispered, automatically moving to gather the still sleeping Lily into her arms. Riley extinguished their small light. "Listen." In the silence that followed, Hannah detected it. The faint sound of voices in the distance and the cracking of branches underfoot. BlackRock's men had somehow found their trail. "We need to move," Hannah breathed, gently shaking Lily awake. "Sweetheart, we have to go. Stay quiet." Lily blinked sleepily but nodded, instantly alert when she saw Luna's tense posture. Without a word, the child moved to the wolf's side, placing a small hand on Luna's back. Something unspoken passed between them, and then Luna was moving again, this time at a faster pace. They pushed on through the darkness, guided only by moonlight and Luna's uncanny navigation. The sounds of pursuit faded, then returned, sometimes closer and sometimes more distant. It became clear that their pursuers had split into groups to search more efficiently. "We are not going to outrun them," Riley whispered after a particularly close call when voices could be heard just a few hundred yards away. "Not with the cub and Lily slowing us down." Hannah's mind raced. "We need a diversion." Luna, who had been leading them steadily northeast, suddenly changed direction, veering sharply west. Lily followed without hesitation. "Luna has an idea," the child announced softly. "She says to trust her." Hannah and Riley exchanged glances. Trusting a wolf's strategy over their own judgment seemed insane, yet every instinct told Hannah to follow her daughter's lead. "Okay," she agreed. "Let's see what Luna has in mind." The wolf led them to a rocky outcropping overlooking a steep ravine. At its base flowed a wider, faster stream than the one they had crossed earlier. Luna stopped at the edge, looking back at them expectantly. "I don't understand," Hannah said, peering down at the rushing water below. "What does she want us to do?" Lily crouched beside Luna, her face scrunched in concentration as if listening intently. "She says we need to go down to the water. The rocks will hide our scent. And—" The child hesitated, looking uncertain. "She says she and Shadow need to go another way, to lead the bad men away from us." "No," Hannah protested immediately. "It's too dangerous. They'll kill them if they catch them." Riley placed a hand on Hannah's arm. "They won't catch them. These wolves know this forest better than any human ever could, and Luna's intelligence is extraordinary." "She says we'll meet at the special cave," Lily continued, her eyes wide and serious in the moonlight. "She knows how to find it." Hannah knelt to look the wolf in the eyes. There was something in Luna's gaze, an ancient wisdom, a fierce determination that transcended species. This was no ordinary animal. This was a being making a conscious choice to protect them, just as she protected her cub. "Okay," Hannah whispered finally, "but be careful." Luna nudged Lily's hand with her muzzle, then turned to Shadow. The cub, though still limping, seemed stronger by the minute. Together, mother and child disappeared into the underbrush, heading away from the North Ridge and directly toward their pursuers. "Come on," Riley urged. "If we're going to use this diversion, we need to move now." Hannah helped Lily navigate the steep slope down to the stream below. The water was frigid, making them gasp as they waded in, but Riley was right. Moving through the water would mask their scent trail, making it impossible for the hunters to track them. They followed the stream for nearly a mile before climbing back onto solid ground, thoroughly soaked but hopefully having thrown off their pursuers. Through it all, Lily remained stoically brave, never complaining about the cold or her exhaustion. "Will Luna be okay?" she asked finally as they paused to catch their breath in a small clearing. Hannah hugged her daughter close. "I think Luna might be the most remarkable creature I've ever met. If anyone can outsmart those men, she can." Riley consulted her GPS again. "We're less than a mile from the North Ridge now. We should reach the cave system entrance before dawn if we keep moving." The eastern sky had just begun to lighten with the first hints of dawn when they finally reached the base of the North Ridge. The terrain grew rockier and steeper, with ancient pines clinging tenaciously to the mountainside. Hannah's muscles ached from the night's exertion, but concern for Lily kept her moving forward. The child had been extraordinarily resilient throughout their journey, but Hannah could see fatigue etched across her small face. "It should be just ahead," Riley whispered, consulting a hand-drawn map she had pulled from Thomas's research journal. Thomas marked the cave entrance behind a stand of 3 lightning-struck pines. Hannah squinted in the pre-dawn light. "There," she pointed to a cluster of tall pines about 50 yards up the slope. Their tops were indeed blackened and twisted, evidence of a lightning strike from years past. They climbed carefully toward the trees, alert for any sign of Blackrock's men. The forest was eerily quiet, with none of the usual morning bird song, a silence that made Hannah increasingly uneasy. "Where's Luna?" Lily asked suddenly, her voice small with worry. "She said she'd meet us here." "She'll come," Hannah assured her daughter, though her own concern was growing. Had the wolf and her cub been captured, or worse? When they reached the 3 pines, Riley began examining the rock face behind them. "It should be here somewhere. The entrance isn't obvious." "There," Lily said confidently, pointing to what appeared to be merely a shadow between 2 large boulders. "Luna showed me in my head. You have to turn sideways to get in." Riley and Hannah exchanged glances of amazement. The child's connection to the wolf seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. Sure enough, when they approached the shadow Lily had indicated, they discovered a narrow crevice just wide enough for a person to slip through sideways. Cool air wafted from the opening, carrying the earthy scent of the underground. "I'll go first," Riley offered, pulling a flashlight from her backpack. "Stay close behind me. These cave systems can be labyrinthine." Hannah nodded, taking Lily's hand firmly in her own. "We'll be right behind you." Riley disappeared into the crevice. Hannah took a deep breath, fighting against a sudden claustrophobic panic, then guided Lily into the narrow opening. The rock walls pressed close on either side as they inched sideways through the passage. After about 15 feet, the crevice suddenly widened, opening into a larger cave chamber where Riley stood waiting, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "We made it," Hannah breathed, relief washing over her as they emerged from the tight passage into the more spacious cavern. Riley nodded, sweeping her light around the chamber. "This is just the beginning. According to Thomas's notes, the true discovery is much deeper in the system." The cave they stood in was roughly circular, with a ceiling high enough that Riley's flashlight couldn't quite reach it. Several tunnel openings branched off in different directions, like the spokes of a wheel. "Which way?" Hannah asked, eyeing the options uncertainly. Before Riley could consult her map again, they heard a sound that made their blood run cold, voices echoing from the entrance passage behind them. "They found us," Riley whispered, her face pale in the flashlight's glow. "We need to hide, now." They quickly doused their light and pressed themselves against the wall of the chamber, hoping the darkness would conceal them. But the voices grew closer, and soon flashlight beams sliced through the darkness from the entrance tunnel. "I'm telling you, they came this way," a gruff voice insisted. "The tracking device on Chen's backpack shows she's in these caves." Hannah shot Riley a horrified look in the dim light. The young researcher's hand flew to her backpack strap, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. "They must have planted it at the university," she whispered, yanking the pack off and frantically searching its exterior. "Here." Her fingers found a small device no larger than a button sewn into a seam. She wrenched it free and was about to throw it away when Hannah grabbed her wrist. "Wait," Hannah breathed, a desperate plan forming in her mind. She took the tracker and motioned toward one of the tunnel openings. "We'll throw it down there. Make them think we went that way." Riley nodded in understanding. Hannah hurled the small device as far as she could down the leftmost tunnel, hearing it skitter and bounce deeper into the darkness. "This way," she whispered, pulling Lily toward a different passage on the opposite side. Riley followed, and the three of them hurried as quietly as possible into the tunnel just as their pursuers entered the main chamber. The passage they'd chosen sloped steeply downward, the floor slick with moisture. They moved as quickly as they dared in the near-total darkness, using the rough cave wall as a guide. Behind them, they could hear excited shouts as their pursuers detected the tracker signal and followed it in the wrong direction. "That won't fool them for long," Riley warned as they continued deeper into the earth. "Once they realize the tracker's alone, they'll double back and search every tunnel. Then we need to find what Thomas discovered before they do," Hannah replied grimly. The tunnel twisted and turned, occasionally branching. At each junction, Lily would pause, her head tilted as if listening to a voice only she could hear. "This way," she would say confidently, choosing their path without hesitation. "Luna is helping me." Hannah wanted to question how her daughter could possibly be receiving guidance from a wolf who wasn't physically present, but the child's navigation had yet to lead them astray. Something extraordinary was happening here, something beyond her understanding. After what seemed like hours of descent, though it might have been only 30 minutes, they emerged into another chamber, this one significantly larger than the first. Riley cautiously switched on her flashlight, keeping the beam pointed downward to minimize the chance of its light being detected by their pursuers. What the dim light revealed took their breath away. The chamber's walls were lined with crystals that caught the flashlight's beam and reflected it in 1,000 sparkling points. But more astonishing were the faint blue-green lines that seemed to run through the rock itself, creating patterns like circuitry or a nervous system throughout the cavern. "Bioluminescent minerals," Riley breathed, her scientific mind immediately categorizing what they were seeing, just like Thomas described. Lily walked to the center of the chamber, her small face illuminated by the subtle glow. "The special rocks," she whispered in awe. "This is what Luna wanted us to find." Hannah approached one of the walls, examining the glowing veins more closely. "What is this? I've never seen anything like it." Thomas believed it's a previously undiscovered mineral with unusual properties, Riley explained, her voice hushed with wonder. "The wolves have been denning in these caves for countless generations, drinking water that filters through these mineral deposits, possibly even ingesting trace amounts through grooming after contact. And it changed them," Hannah concluded, "made them more intelligent." Riley nodded. That was Thomas's theory. Epigenetic modifications activated by prolonged exposure to the mineral, changes that were then passed down to their offspring, becoming more pronounced with each generation. Lily, who had been walking the perimeter of the chamber, suddenly stopped. "There's more," she announced, pointing to a narrow opening, partially hidden behind a rock formation. "Luna says the most important part is through there." The passage Lily indicated was even tighter than the entrance had been, requiring them to crawl on hands and knees. Hannah went first this time, worried about what might await them on the other side. The tunnel was short but claustrophobic, opening abruptly into a space so extraordinary that Hannah froze halfway through, temporarily paralyzed by astonishment. They had entered a roughly dome-shaped cavern where the bioluminescence was no longer confined to veins in the rock, but spread throughout the entire chamber, bathing everything in a soft, pulsing blue-green light. The effect was like being underwater, with the light seeming to ripple and flow across the surfaces. In the center of the chamber was a raised platform of stone, and on it lay what appeared to be artifacts, objects clearly fashioned by intelligent hands, stone tools with impossibly fine craftsmanship, arrangements of bones and feathers in geometric patterns, small clay vessels decorated with symbols that resembled neither human writing nor random markings. "Oh my God," Riley whispered as she emerged from the tunnel behind Hannah. "Thomas was right. It's not just the wolves that are special. It's this place." Hannah stepped carefully into the chamber, drawn to the platform and its mysterious contents. "Who made these?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer, an answer so impossible that her mind rebelled against it. "The wolves," Lily said simply, as if stating the obvious. "Luna's family has been making things for a long, long time." Riley was documenting everything with her phone's camera, her hands shaking with excitement. "This changes everything we understand about animal intelligence and evolution. The wolves haven't just become smarter, they've developed a primitive culture. Tool use, symbolic expression, possibly even a communication system beyond what we thought possible." Hannah was about to respond when a low growl echoed through the chamber. They whirled to see Luna standing in a different entrance they hadn't noticed before, her amber eyes glowing in the eerie light. Behind her, Shadow peeked around his mother's legs, his wound now a barely visible scar. "Luna!" Lily cried in delight, rushing toward the wolf. Hannah's instinct was to pull her daughter back, but she restrained herself, watching in amazement as the child threw her arms around the large predator's neck. Luna endured the embrace patiently, even leaning slightly into it before gently extracting herself and padding toward the stone platform. The mother wolf stopped at the edge of the raised area, looking back at Hannah and Riley expectantly. "She wants to show us something," Lily translated, following the wolf. Luna nosed aside some of the artifacts, revealing a flat stone tablet covered in those same mysterious symbols. She looked directly at Hannah, then down at the tablet, then back up again. Riley crouched to examine it, her scientific training warring with the impossible implications before her. "These markings, they're too regular to be accidental, too consistent to be merely decorative." She looked up at Hannah, her expression dazed. Thomas believed the wolves were trying to communicate through these symbols. Hannah knelt beside the tablet, her fingers hovering just above its surface. "Communicate what?" "A warning," came a familiar voice from behind them. They all turned to see a figure standing in the same entrance Luna had used. For a moment, Hannah's heart stopped, unable to process what her eyes were seeing. Thomas Morgan stood in the opening, thinner than she remembered, and with a ragged beard, but unmistakably alive. "Thomas?" Hannah whispered, convinced she must be hallucinating from exhaustion and stress. "Hello, Hannah," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "I see you finally found my research project." Hannah stumbled to her feet, emotions warring within her, relief, joy, confusion, and a growing anger. "You're alive. You've been alive all this time while we thought you were dead?" "Daddy!" Lily broke the tension, launching herself at her father. Thomas caught her in a tight embrace, closing his eyes as he held his daughter for the first time in months. "I'm sorry," he whispered, looking over Lily's head at Hannah. "I had no choice. If they knew I was alive, you and Lily would never have been safe." Riley stepped forward, her expression a mix of shock and scientific curiosity. "Doctor, Morgan, your research, it's all true then? Everything about the wolves?" Thomas nodded, gently setting Lily down but keeping her hand in his. "That and more. Luna's pack isn't just unusually intelligent. They're evolving into something beyond what we understand as wolf. Maybe even beyond what we understand as animal." Luna moved to Thomas's side, looking up at him with what could only be described as recognition and trust. Shadow followed, sniffing curiously at the man's boots. "But why fake your death?" Hannah demanded, still struggling to reconcile her grief of the past 6 months with her husband's sudden reappearance. "Why put us through that?" Thomas's expression darkened. "Because I discovered what Blackrock mining is really after, and it's not just rare earth elements. It's this." He gestured to the glowing chamber around them. "The bioluminescent mineral, what the local indigenous people once called ghost stone, has properties that go beyond the physical. It affects brain development, neural pathways, possibly even consciousness itself. The wolves have been exposed to it for generations," Riley added, understanding dawning in her eyes. "That's why they've evolved so differently." Thomas nodded. Blackrock discovered its potential applications for human neural enhancement during their initial surveys. Military applications, primarily. Imagine soldiers with accelerated healing, enhanced sensory perception, improved cognitive function. "So they want to mine it," Hannah concluded. "And the wolves' territory was in the way." "Exactly." When I figured out what they were planning, I confronted Harmon, thinking naively that the Forest Service would intervene. Instead, I discovered he was already on Blackrock's payroll. They tried to kill me that day. "But how did you escape?" Riley asked. "And where have you been all this time?" Thomas smiled wryly. "Luna saved me, led me to a part of the cave system only she and her pack knew about. I've been living here since then, continuing my research, trying to find a way to protect the wolves and expose Blackrock's operation." Hannah felt a profound sense of betrayal wash over her. "You could have sent word, let us know you were alive." "I tried," Thomas insisted, his expression pained. "I left clues in my journal, my cloud storage. I hoped you would find them, follow them here, but I couldn't risk direct contact. Blackrock has been watching our cabin, monitoring communications. If they even suspected I was alive." He trailed off, the implication clear. A sudden commotion from one of the tunnels interrupted their reunion, the sound of voices and equipment echoing through the cave system. "They're getting closer," Riley warned. "They must have realized the tracker was a decoy." Luna's ears perked up at the sound, and she growled low in her throat. Shadow pressed against his mother's leg, sensing the danger. "We need to get out of here," Thomas said urgently. "There's another exit that leads to the back side of the ridge. If we can reach it, we might be able to make it to the ranger station in Pinewood. I have evidence there, enough to expose Blackrock and Harmon." Hannah stared at her husband, still processing his sudden return from the dead. "Thomas, A gunshot echoed through the caves, much closer than before, cutting off her words. "No time," Thomas said grimly. "We need to move, now." As they gathered their belongings, Luna suddenly stiffened. her attention focused on the tunnel through which they had entered. A moment later, a figure appeared. Not one of Blackrock's men, but an elderly Native American man, his weathered face grave. "Joseph," Thomas acknowledged with clear relief. "Did you bring what I asked for?" The old man nodded, stepping fully into the chamber. He carried a battered leather satchel, which he handed to Thomas. "It's all there. The tribal council has agreed to your plan." "Thank you," Thomas said earnestly. "Everyone, this is Joseph Blackfeather. He's an elder of the Nehalem tribe and has been helping me document the historical significance of these caves. The ghost stone has been sacred to his people for centuries." Joseph surveyed the chamber with reverent eyes. "Our stories speak of the spirit wolves who were keepers of wisdom, who learned the ways of humans but chose to remain wild. For generations, my ancestors protected the secret of this place." Another gunshot, closer still. Luna growled, more urgently this time. "The old ways must return," Joseph said cryptically, retrieving a small clay pot from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a dark powder. "This will help." He began spreading the powder in a circle around them, chanting softly in his native language. Hannah watched in confusion. "Thomas, what is he doing?" "Trust him," Thomas urged. "The Nehalem have been interacting with Luna's ancestors for hundreds of years. Their understanding of the wolves and the ghost stone goes beyond Western science." Joseph completed his circle and stepped back. "Now we wait," he said simply. Before Hannah could question further, a remarkable thing happened. Luna threw back her head and released a howl. Not the mournful sound of a lone wolf, but a complex series of tones that echoed strangely in the chamber, seeming to resonate with the glowing minerals themselves. The bioluminescence intensified, pulsing in rhythm with Luna's call. Shadow joined his mother, his younger voice harmonizing in a way that made the hair on Hannah's arms stand on end. "What's happening?" she whispered, instinctively pulling Lily closer to her side. Joseph smiled mysteriously. "The spirit wolves are calling their family." From the tunnels around them came answering howls. First one, then three, then what sounded like dozens, all converging on their location. The glowing minerals brightened further, casting the chamber in an almost daylight-level illumination. Riley gasped as the first wolves appeared. Sleek, silver-gray creatures with intelligent eyes that assessed the humans without fear. More followed, padding silently into the chamber until they were surrounded by at least 20 wolves, all with the same unusual amber eyes as Luna. "The pack," Thomas explained in hushed tones. "All of them survived Blackrock's hunting parties. They've been hiding in the deepest parts of the cave system." The wolves formed a circle around the humans, Luna and Shadow at their center. The mother wolf looked directly at Lily, and something seemed to pass between them. "They're going to help us," Lily announced with utter certainty. "Luna says the bad men won't be able to follow where we're going." Before Hannah could ask what her daughter meant, the voices of their pursuers grew suddenly loud. They had reached the chamber just outside. In moments, they would discover the entrance to this sacred space. Joseph nodded to Thomas, who quickly gathered everyone close together in the center of the wolf circle. "Whatever happens next," Thomas instructed, "stay together and follow the wolves. Do not stray from the path they show us." The old man began another chant, this one louder and more rhythmic. The wolves joined in with harmonized howls that seemed to make the very air vibrate. The bioluminescence pulsed faster, growing almost painfully bright, the blue-green light washing over everything in waves. Hannah heard men shouting, saw flashlight beams penetrate the chamber entrance, then something extraordinary happened. The stone beneath their feet seemed to become insubstantial. not crumbling away but transforming into something like mist. The sensation was not of falling but of gentle descent, as if they were sinking through layers of reality itself. The last thing Hannah saw before the cave and their pursuers vanished from view was the look of pure astonishment on Director Harmon's face as he burst into the chamber, gun raised, only to find his targets disappearing before his eyes, surrounded by a circle of wolves that should not exist. Then everything was light and sensation and movement. Hannah felt Lily's hand in hers, Thomas's arm around her shoulders, the brush of wolf fur against her legs, but saw nothing except swirling blue-green radiance. There was no up or down, no sense of time or space, only motion and light, and the continuous harmonized howling of the wolves guiding them through whatever impossible passage they had opened. Hannah couldn't have said whether their journey lasted seconds or hours. Reality seemed to fold and unfold around them in ways her mind couldn't process. She closed her eyes against the overwhelming sensations, focusing only on maintaining her grip on Lily and Thomas. When the movement finally stopped and the light dimmed to bearable levels, Hannah cautiously opened her eyes. They stood in a forest clearing she didn't recognize, surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to stretch impossibly high into the sky. The wolves were still with them, arranged in a protective circle, but now they seemed different. Larger, their fur shimmering with traces of the same bioluminescence they had seen in the cave. "Where are we?" she whispered, afraid to break the profound silence that surrounded them. Joseph smiled, looking more at home in this strange place than he had in the cave. "The between place," he said simply. "Not quite your world, not quite the spirit world. A sanctuary the wolves created long ago using the power of the ghost stone." "That's not possible," Riley protested weakly, her scientific worldview clearly shattered by what she had experienced. "We can't have traveled between dimensions." "And yet, here we are," Thomas said gently. He looked around the clearing with the wonder of a man seeing something long studied but never before witnessed. "The wolves have been trying to show me this place for months, but I couldn't perceive it properly. It took all of us together, plus Joseph's ritual, to make the crossing possible." Luna approached Hannah and Lily, her amber eyes somehow deeper and more knowing in this place. She looked at Hannah with an intelligence that could no longer be denied or explained away as animal instinct. This was a conscious being making deliberate choices. "She says we're safe here," Lily translated, her small hand resting on Luna's head. "Blackrock can't follow us." "But we can't stay here forever," Hannah pointed out, still struggling to accept the impossible reality around them. "We need to expose what Blackrock is doing, protect the wolves and their home," Thomas nodded, opening the satchel Joseph had given him. "That's what this is for. Documentation of the caves dating back centuries, tribal records of the wolves' evolution, scientific data I've been collecting. Together with Riley's footage and my research journal, it's enough to trigger a federal investigation into Blackrock mining and their operations." "But how do we get back to our world to share it?" Riley asked, looking around at the ethereal forest surrounding them. Joseph and Thomas exchanged meaningful glances. "The way back is more complicated," Thomas admitted. "According to Nehalem legends, those who enter the between place don't always return to exactly when or where they left." Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean?" "It means," Joseph explained, "that while we are here, we must choose our moment of return carefully. The spirit wolves can open the way back to your world at different times, different places." Luna made a soft huffing sound and looked at Lily. The child's eyes widened. "Luna says we could go back before all this started," Lily explained, her young face serious beyond her years. "Before the bad men came, we could stop them. Time travel?" Riley laughed incredulously. "Now, that is definitely impossible." Joseph shook his head. "Not time travel as you understand it. The between place exists outside your linear perception of time. From here, all moments are accessible." Hannah looked at Thomas, searching his face for some sign that this was all an elaborate hoax or shared hallucination. But her husband's expression held only wonder and determination. "I know it sounds insane," he said softly, "but after everything you've seen the wolves do, is this really so much harder to believe?" Hannah thought of Luna bringing her dying cub to their doorstep, of Lily's inexplicable connection to the wolves, of the mysterious artifacts in the cave, evidence of intelligence and consciousness that defied conventional understanding. If all that was possible, perhaps this was too. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked, making a conscious decision to suspend her disbelief. Thomas squeezed her hand gratefully. "We used the wolves' ability to return to our world 3 months ago, before BlackRock's operation reached its final stage. We take our evidence directly to the federal authorities, bypassing Harmon entirely." "And if we do this," Hannah pressed, "what happens to us?" "The versions of us already existing in that time," Joseph answered before Thomas could. "The old stories say, those who return become shadows, watching but not seen, until the moment they choose to intersect with the world again. Then, the shadow and the substance become one." "That makes no sense," Riley protested. "None of this makes sense by conventional standards," Thomas pointed out. "But it's our best chance to save the wolves and stop BlackRock before they destroy something miraculous in the name of profit." Luna made a sound that was almost like speech, drawing everyone's attention. The wolf looked directly at Hannah, her gaze penetrating and somehow ancient. "She's asking for your decision," Lily translated. "Luna says all of us must agree for the crossing to work." Hannah looked around at their extraordinary company. Her husband, who had returned from the dead, her daughter with her unexplainable bond to a creature of impossible intelligence, the tribal elder with his ancient knowledge, the young scientist whose worldview had been shattered, and a pack of wolves that defied everything humans thought they understood about animal consciousness. In the face of such wonders, her skepticism seemed not just futile but somehow small-minded. If this strange journey could save her family and protect the extraordinary beings that had trusted them with their secret, what choice did she really have? "I agree," Hannah said finally. "Let's go back and make things right." Thomas smiled, relief evident in his features. "Riley? Joseph?" They both nodded their assent, Riley still looking shell-shocked but determined. "Then it's decided," Thomas said. He turned to Luna. "We're ready when you are." The mother wolf threw back her head and released a howl more complex and haunting than any Hannah had heard before. The other wolves joined in, creating a symphony that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the strange forest around them. The air began to shimmer with blue-green light, reminiscent of the cave minerals but somehow more fluid, more alive. As the light intensified, Hannah gathered Lily close, felt Thomas's arm wrap around them both. The wolves drew their circle tighter, their forms beginning to blur as the light grew blinding. "Hold on to each other," Joseph instructed. "The passage can be disorienting." The last thing Hannah saw before the light consumed everything was Luna's intelligent eyes fixed on hers, conveying a message that needed no translation, a promise that, whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, human and wolf united by a bond that transcended species, forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual trust. Then the world dissolved once more into swirling radiance, carrying them back toward a past that now held the key to their future, and to the survival of creatures who had evolved beyond humanity's understanding, but still needed human allies to protect their extraordinary existence. As they traveled through the impossible passage between worlds, Hannah made a silent vow to honor the trust Luna had placed in her family. Whatever the cost, she would ensure that the crying wolf who had brought her dying cub to their door would find not just temporary aid but lasting sanctuary for her remarkable kind. Behind them, in the cave chamber they had left, Director Harmon and his Blackrock associates stared in disbelief at the empty space where their quarry had vanished. The bioluminescent minerals pulsed one final time, then dimmed to dormancy, taking with them the secret of the wolves' passage, a mystery that would haunt the men's dreams, but forever remain beyond their reach. For some gifts of knowledge, the world was not yet ready. But in the careful custody of those who respected its power, the secret of the spirit wolves and their ghost stone would endure, waiting for a time when humanity might be wise enough to understand without seeking to control. Luna had chosen her human allies well. In Hannah, Thomas, and especially young Lily, the wolves had found not masters or mere protectors, but true companions on an evolutionary journey that would continue to unfold in ways neither species could fully predict, but would navigate together, guided by bonds of trust that bridged the ancient divide between human and wolf.